lovelies, my name is Jessica and welcome to Makeup.misfit, and today is the final video in my makeup collection and inventory series. We're chatting eyeshadow palettes. So before I get into everything, I did just sort through all of these palettes that are sitting in front of me, put them into piles by brand, so that's how we are going to go through this. I do have a pile that I want to start off with. These are my I don't know what I want to do with palettes. I really went through everything, and these are ones that I may want to declutter, pass along, and somehow get out of my collection, possibly by the end of this year. So we're going to start off with that palette or pile, but before we do, I just want to show you this little organizer is where I keep all of my eyeshadow palettes. So I have 9 of these in total, and each of these holds 9 palettes. So you do the math, plus I have a couple palettes that do not fit into these. So hopefully, I know that I'm going to be getting a couple more eyeshadow palettes in my collection this year, but my goal would be to have all of the eyeshadow palettes fit into these and not purchase a 10th one. We'll have to see how it goes, because I'm not going to stop myself from buying eyeshadow palettes this year, but I don't really have, I have a few that I have in mind that I want to bring in, so we'll have to see how this year goes. I will have a number at the end of the video as to how many eyeshadow palettes I have in my collection. Feel free to count along if you want, but let's get started. So like I said, we're going to start off with the pile that I really don't know what I want to do with. These ones I've hemmed and hawed. I've had a feeling and then completely changed my mind on these palettes. So I don't know where I'm sitting at exactly. And the first one we're going to chat about is this one. If you've been around, this is the Milani Everyday Eyes in Bare Necessities. You have heard me talk about this one a few times. This was a Pan That palette option, I want to say 3 years ago now, maybe 2 years ago, and I decided against it. But for some reason, this palette just has my heartstrings. I was able to declutter the other 2 that I had, no problem, but for some reason, this one's just been hanging on, and I don't know what I want to do with it. I don't know how I feel about it. I would love to try and use it, fall in love with the palette, show some pan, maybe use it up one day, but I don't know. So I'm going to try and get some use on it this year. Hopefully that can happen and I can fall in love, and then I'll be happy that I've held on to it. But I'm thinking that at this point, because I have not used this in such a long time and it's only had like maybe 2 or 3 uses at most on it, that if I don't use this by the end of this year, I will have to part ways with it, cut ties, and just end up getting rid of it. Another palette I don't know about is one that I've sort of brought back into my collection. I've had this hanging around for a little bit, and I decided to kind of just pull it back in, try and get some use on it, and see what I decide. This is a Stila palette, and these are the Eyes Are the Window shadow palettes, and this is in the shade Soul. So this is just your neutral color story. This shade here is Kitten, which is kind of what drew me back into pulling this in, but I don't know if I'm going to really reach for those shades. It's windy outside. Okay. I just heard something banging up against my house. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to use these shades, and I don't know about this one. I feel like I'm probably not going to really dip into this too much this year, but we're going to give it a shot, and I might even give this until the summertime, and if I don't use it, then I will get rid of it. Another one, which ironically I pulled back into my collection a year or so ago, more so for the packaging than anything, is this Finger Foils by Tarte, and this was the Rainforest of the Sea collection. Now, I do have pan in one of these glitters, and that's pretty much it. The most used shade is this one right here, but I never think to reach for this palette. I never really want to reach for this palette. Again, I brought it in because of the packaging, so I could probably get rid of this palette and not feel so bad about it, but again, decisions need to be made. One palette that I have, this is by Sigma, and I got this as like a free gift, I think it was, when I placed an order. You spent so much and you got this palette for free. This is the Spicy palette. Now, I was excited to actually get this palette because I'm pretty sure I had heard good things about this, but I've only used it like once or twice and I have not been impressed. At least with the shimmers, I don't remember if I really dipped into the mattes too much. So I do want to try this one, but again, if I want to pass this along, I really don't want to have too much use on it. So I might do one more eye look, 2 at most, and make a decision. I do have other Sigma palettes we'll chat about a little bit later as well, but I really don't know how I feel about this, so I want to at least get a little bit of an opinion on it, and then again, if I need to, I will pass it along. But I was a little bit disappointed in these shimmers, which just kind of makes me not want the palette as a whole. This one kind of like is hard. So this is the Little Ray of Sunshine palette from ColourPop. If you watched my video yesterday, my eyeshadow singles, I had 2 shades in this palette that I put into that singles collection. I was originally going to get rid of them, but I decided to hold on to them. And what I did instead was I took 2 shades from a Pat McGrath. It was those mini 5-pan palettes. They were like the clear plastic packaging. I had the neutral one. And this shade here and this shade here were from that palette. I have since gotten rid of the rest of the shades, so you won't see that palette in this video, but I do have these 2 shades from here, and I figured it went well with this color story. It fit perfectly pan size wise, so I wanted to try and like kind of create my own color story slightly. Not much is different from the original, but I don't know what I want to do with this. I'm not big on ColourPop. Like, I don't mind them, but I also don't get the big hype about them. So what I might do in the end is, if I do decide to get rid of this, I'm going to keep the packaging and make it into a small magnetic palette, which I know I've talked about once or twice before. I will keep these 2 Pat McGrath shades, maybe a couple of others. I've hit pan in this shade a while ago. I had this in Pan Those Eyeshadows a couple years back. So I might make this into a little magnetic palette and then just kind of see how it goes. The packaging I love. I bought this, like, I think it was half price. So it was like $7. So I love sunflowers, the whole thing. I just don't know about the color story. It was an all matte palette, which I liked at the time. I still like more mattes than shimmers, I suppose, but I don't know what I want to do with this one. We'll have to see. This one I also brought back into my collection because I kind of forgot that I had this. This is from Urban Decay, and this is the Smoked palette. This is really old. A friend of mine that I used to work with got this for me for Christmas one year. I haven't reached for it because it's a little too deep and grungy for me, but a part of me wants to, I don't know, a part of me wants to dip into it just to try it. The liner I have in a project currently. Other than that, this hasn't been touched at all, so I don't know if I'm going to reach for this or if this is something that I'm going to pass along. I do feel kind of guilty about it, but I also feel guilty that I haven't reached for it, and I've had it for who knows how many years at this point. So I really don't know what to do, but if I don't reach for this year, I will have to just let it go, bite the bullet, and unfortunately it is what it is. Another palette that I'm like about is this one from Tarte. I feel so torn on this one. So this is the Toasted palette, the Tartelette Toasted, and you can see from the packaging, like, it's just, I don't know what is wrong with this. I've only had this for a few years and I've barely dipped into this palette, if at all. It has fallen a few times, so the shades have fallen out. I've put them back. They are slightly cracked, but I mean, it looks messy considering I haven't actually reached for this palette. And every time I think I might, I just kind of look at it and I'm just kind of turned off by it. But this is the palette that got me into warm tones, so I feel like I owe it a little bit of something, at least a couple of uses, but I don't know if I'm going to actually get around to doing that. So this might be something that I pass along maybe sooner than later, but I feel like some of these I just need to, you know, make a decision on, figure out what I want to do with. And another one of those is another Tarte palette. This is the Tarteist Pro. When this first came out, I wanted this so bad. I finally purchased it, and I'm happy that I did because I got a decent amount of use on it. Mainly it was these shades around this area. You can see like the usage in a lot of these shades here. This one I've completely finished off. It was a lid setting shade. I want to use some of these shimmers. There are shades that I still want to dip into. I'm not quite ready to let this go. This shade here cracked a bit, but I still have some of it in there, so I want to try and hit pan on that one, maybe finish it off, do a look with, you know, some of these. I just haven't done that, and I just, again, it's one of those palettes where like I want to, I feel like I need to, I feel like I owe it a little bit of something. I feel guilty not doing it, but at the same time, I just don't want to reach for them. So maybe one day I will have that want to actually dip into it, but I do have quite a few, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 palettes that I may pass along at some point this year. So now we're going to move on to palettes that I only have one from the brand, And this, I believe, these ones, I'm going to pull this one in too. Okay. First, I'm not going to show you a picture because this is my Pan That palette this year with the Fantastic Ladies, but this is my Lorac Mini Pro palette in Winter Rose. So like I said, this is my Pan That palette, so I'm getting a lot of use on it. I really enjoy this palette. I'm going to try and post photos of the palettes that I don't show you the insides of because there may be some of those, considering some of these are in projects right now. But I really do like this. I don't think I'd purchase another Lorac palette, maybe one of these mini ones, but I'm not quite sure. I want to completely finish this one up and then make a decision on that at some point, but it's definitely not going to be something that I run out to repurchase after I finish this one. I could probably go another good few years without purchasing a Lorac palette, or maybe even never again, who knows. But that is that current one. This is the one shadow palette that I have from NARS. Now this is something that I got off Poshmark and I haven't actually reached for it yet, but something about this color story just grabbed me and I'm thinking it might be this hot pink down here. There's just something about this. The shimmers, even though they do look used, it hasn't been from me. So, I mean, this just looks absolutely beautiful and I feel like if and when I finally do reach for this palette, I am going to enjoy it. I haven't really been interested in any of the other NARS eyeshadow palettes that have come out over the last few years, except for this one. So I'm hoping maybe I can get some use on this before another one comes out and I may like it. And then I'll kind of make my decision based off of how I prefer this one or not. I do have this little Care Bears palette by Violet Voss. I love this thing so much. I really wasn't interested in the full size of this, but this mini one was absolutely perfect. I have a good dip going on in this shade here called Champ Bear. I've really loved pairing these shades together, doing a 2 or 3 look just with these shades alone, and I've found that they've turned out to be so fun, so cute, so pretty each time, so I'm really happy that I have this one. Again, once I eventually use this up, hopefully is the goal, I will probably keep the packaging and use it as a little magnetic palette. I do have one What's Up Beauty palette. This is the Geodes palette. Now I will open this because there isn't any changes since most of you have last seen this, but I have been loving this palette. There's only been a couple of shades in here that I've been reaching for lately, and this shade right here that has a large amount of pan is what I've been wearing in my brows. That's the only way that I've been wearing it, and I've really been enjoying it. I don't know if it's the right shade, but it's good enough for now. And I just absolutely love this palette so far. There's definitely shades that I still need to reach for. I want to play around with it a little bit more, but I know that that's going to happen sometime this year. I do have the Maybelline Nudes of New York palette, and this is getting a little bit of use on it. This shade right here is what I'm currently using to set down my lids. I think I'm going to repress it because it is a little bit difficult to get around the pan. And then once I finish off this shade, I may actually move on to this one here just to keep this palette in my collection. I don't really reach for the other shades too often, especially since I have a lot of eyeshadows going on in projects currently. But I do like to dip into it the odd time just to get something a little bit different, still play around with this palette a bit. I got this one for Christmas from my mom a couple of years ago, so I feel like I should show it a little bit more love. So it is a daily use palette because of this lid setting shade, and then I'll probably move on to that one. My absolute favorite eyeshadow palette in my collection, if you saw whatever video that was back in December, this is going to come as no surprise to you, but this is my Makeup by Maria's Ethereal Eyes palette. This is one that I would repurchase, and I probably will. I love this thing so much. I have now, I think I've used almost every shade in this palette now except for this one because it's a lid setting shade, but all of the shimmers, the toppers have pan in it. I think this may be the only one I haven't reached for at this point, minus, like I said, this one. I adore this thing. I love this so much. Like, it's so simple, so easy, but so beautiful, and the toppers, they're stunning. Like, this is a palette that I will pull out for my birthday pictures. This is a palette that I will pull out when I want to wear a red lip. This is the palette that was used when we did our makeup for my friend's wedding, like the makeup artist had this palette and I was like, oh yeah, I need to use that palette again. And I've pretty much been using it a decent amount since September when the wedding was. When I got this back in January of last year, I've only had it for just over a year now. I had so much use on it in the beginning, and normally I like to keep my things a little pristine for a while, but I dug into this and I adored it. So I know that this is going to be a palette that I repurchase as long as it stays around, which I hope it does. But I will definitely be having a brand new one at some point, not anytime soon, but those toppers, I need those toppers in my collection. I do have another ColourPop palette, which I will be holding on to. This is my Lizzie McGuire What Dreams Are Made Of palette. I love this so much. This is like my childhood. I have talked about making this into an empty magnetic palette as well, which I will probably do. There's some shades in here that I just don't think I'm going to end up reaching for as much as I thought I was going to when I first purchased the palette. Kind of some of like these greenish shades, maybe even these ones right here. I do feel like I want to play around with this a little bit more. There is this glitter I'm not going to use, so I might get rid of that. I've hit pan on Hello Fabulous. I completely finished off that shade. That was probably my favorite one in the palette, so of course that's the one that's gone. But I absolutely adore this thing, and again, this is going to end up being an empty magnetic palette one day. This palette is the only one that I have by Sugar Drizzle, and this is the Sugar Dreams palette. This is an all shimmer palette, which you're going to find out that I don't have very many of those, but this one I'm so happy that I have. This is such a stunning palette, and these two shades right here are my go-to. I like to just throw them all over the lid as a one and done when I just want something super simple, super easy, but also super pretty. And something with a little bit of color and not necessarily a neutral. When it's the neutrals, I tend to go to the Makeup by Mario palette, but when I want a little bit of color, I tend to reach for this one. And I love the fact that a lot of these are like, a few of these are duochrome, so a couple of these, when you swatch them out, they're different than what they look like in the pan. The only one that I really haven't used is probably this middle shade, So Tasty, and then probably this one here. The rest of them I tend to get some use on. But again, they're like pink purple, so they all kind of go together, and I like to pair them as well. I would like to try more Sugar Drizzle. There was one palette, I can't remember what it was called, but it was sold out, so maybe one day in the future, but for now, that is it. And I also have my Udanzai Solmana 2 palette. So this isn't a project as well, but I'm not going to spoil anything by opening this. I love this. I'm going to put up a video, if I remember to, of the swatches that I did on my arm one day. I absolutely fell in love with swatching these all out. I thought that they were stunning. It made me so happy that day. I'm pretty sure I had like a rough day at work, and I just came home, swatched out this palette, and it just made me feel better. I love the packaging on this as well. When I saw this released, I wanted it. I waited, and I think I got it Black Friday in 2022. Last Black Friday, there was a couple I wanted to get. I held off. I wasn't like 100% sure if I really wanted them, not as much as this one. So currently this is the only one, but I would like to eventually maybe try a couple of others and see if I like them just as much. And then one of the newer ones in my collection that I got just back in January is from Cosmic Brushes, I think they're now called, or Cosmic Beauty, sorry. And this is the Delicious Delights palette. This color story is stunning. Out of all of the color stories, this is the one that probably pulled me in the most. I do like the other ones. The Muse is beautiful. But to get like use on the palette as a whole, even though these have blues, I feel like I'd probably reach for this one a lot more than I would any of the other palettes. I would like to continue to see what they're going to come out with in the future and hopefully get another one as long as I like this formula. I do still need to try this because I haven't dipped into it yet. But cost-wise, this was actually cheaper to get in Canadian than it is in US dollars, which is pretty much unheard of. I've been like converting a couple just to see what it would cost to get it shipped to the border, which is like a 20-minute drive from here. And it's a lot cheaper than I would be paying Canadian just to get it shipped to my door. But this one was actually cheaper getting it shipped to my door than it was the border. Mind blown. But also for that reason, I would like to try more of these, and they're very affordable for not being, I don't know, they're just affordable. Another one that I have only, technically, I'm going to count this as one, is the Urban Decay Naked palette. I do have that smoked palette I showed you, but it's on a chopping block. So currently this is the only naked palette that I have. This is the Honey palette, and I love this. Have not worn it in such a long time. I bought it 50% off, I think it was, at Sephora at the time. It was on a good sale. So I picked it up, and when I have reached for this, it's been an all matte look, and it has been every single matte in this palette. I would dip into all of the mattes. Haven't reached for the shimmers yet, but every single matte, and I found it was such an easy, beautiful look. So I do want to try pulling this into something. I think this is eligible for project level up for one of those levels, so maybe this is going to be lucky at that point. I've seen and heard how difficult those pans are to hit, but I would love to try it at some point. Another one is from Kaleidos. This is the Futurism 3 Astro Pink palette. This was one of the few that caught my eye, but I adore this color story so much. I have such a good dip going on in, I want to say it was one of these two shades, and then these two I absolutely love as well. I love doing a look with just those 4 shades. This one's pretty, but it's not my favorite. And then the black eyeshadow, I think it's cool because it's got the silver shimmer in it, but I won't wear it. But this is a color story. Like, I love it as a whole, but wearing it on my eyes, I tend to just reach for only those 4 shades. And I think that they turn out to be a very beautiful look. And I now only have one ABH palette. This is the Amrezy palette. So I had this in Panless Eyeshadows last year. I have 2 pans in this palette now. I have Barb and Cupcake. I have really enjoyed wearing those 2 shades together on the lid. Is pretty much how I would wear it, along with New Yorker, which was the shade that was actually rolled into that project. But because I had hit pan on both of those shades, I allowed myself to roll it out without feeling like I had to hit pan on it. So there are a few shades in here that I want to dip into, play around with, like this hot, bright neon pink. This pink here, more so this side, and, you know, maybe, I don't know. There's a few that I want to play with. Of course, the black I'm not going to use. Maybe this dark brown I won't use, but I feel like the rest of the palette, there are a couple glitters in here, so I don't know what I want to do with those, but we shall see. I'm excited to dip into this one a little bit more at some point. Okay, another 2 palettes I'm going to chat about are by Lethal Cosmetics. So if you saw my singles collection yesterday, you heard me talk about the small little bundle that I have. This one is probably my favorite. It's the After Dark. This is like the 90s inspired palette. So color story wise, I adore this. I would love to try and get some use on this because I feel like this is the one that I could use and have a lot of fun with. I just don't reach for it. So I'm hoping that one day I can actually do that, play around, get a better opinion on it, and make a decision. And then this one is the Velvet Dusk. I believe I bought these. I knew like you could buy them as a bundle, but they had a sale where if you bought them separately, they were cheaper than buying them together. So that's what I did. This is a very pretty color story as well. I think I had this one in a Panless Eyeshadows once. This shimmer here has been on my list. Like, I do like some of these shades individually, not necessarily as a palette, even though I find this color story to be very pretty. I wouldn't reach for this as a palette. So I don't know if I want to take some of these shades out, put them into my singles collection, and then maybe pass along the other shimmers, create a little color story and just pass them along. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I can combine the little quad bundle that I have with some of these and then create a color story. I'm not quite sure, but these 2 I need to make a decision on. But I am having a really hard time with the idea of letting these ones go, especially this one. This one not so much, but because there's a couple shades in here that I really like, I'm having a really difficult time just in general. Okay, we are going to chat. Oh, I forgot this one. This is the only palette that I have from Becca. This is the Eyelights palette. This is technically an eyeshadow palette. I use a couple of these shades as highlighters. I have a few of these shades in projects, but there's no spoilers here. These lighter shades I use as actual highlighters, but these darker ones I use on the lid as eyeshadows if and when I do end up reaching for this one. So that is the only Becca palette that I have. I will be right back though. Okay, so the brand that I want to chat about next is going to be Too Faced, because that is the brand that I have the most palettes from. So first we're just gonna start off with these little mini tin pan, 8-pan palettes. I love these things, even though I don't wear them very often. I love the idea of them. I don't have one of those full-size ones anymore, so these are the closest that I have to the tin packaging. And this one I purchased off Poshmark. I want to say it was about a year ago now. This is the Let's Play palette, and I do have this in a project. And today I am actually wearing this shimmer all over the lids. I have dipped into this one a couple of times already. Small spoiler, because I only have like a 5 usage goal on this palette. But I think it is so cute. I think it's perfect for this time of year. February, Valentine's Day. Plus I kind of like to wear pink looks around my birthday, which is coming up shortly. So I think it's just a whole lot of fun. I love this one so much. I think it's really cute. The next one I have is Salted Caramel, which is probably the one that has the most use on it. I love this color story still. I dipped into this quite a bit when I first got it. It's been a long time since I have used it, but you can see a little bit of usage in some of those, but I know that these shades are very difficult to hit pan on, so you can use it a whole lot and it not actually show the progress. But one that you can see some progress on is this Gingerbread Spice palette. Now, I was not interested in the full size of this when it came out for holidays, whichever year it was, but I found that this small little condensed one was perfect, as it took like the shades that I was a lot more interested in and just curated its own color story. So this worked out very well. I was excited to get this one. I used this a little bit more than I was expecting. I used this actually on Christmas a couple of years ago. This one shade here, you can see some use in that one, usually up in this top corner. And I was pairing these two together a lot just as a simple look on the lid. So I think that the shades in this are actually very pretty and I want to dip into it more. I don't know why I don't. And one that I had to hunt down is the You're So Hot palette. This one was like holiday from last year, or one of the holiday ones from last year. I haven't reached for it and I'm okay with that at the moment, but I had to hunt this palette down because it was no longer on the Too Faced website. Could not find it anywhere. I think it was like maybe just after Christmas, if not even before. I can't quite remember, but I had to get this off like Cult Beauty or something. It took me a while. So it's still untouched, but I'm okay with that. I wanted the bronzer as well, but I'm happy that I at least have this one. So this is not going to go anywhere for a little while. I am going to show you guys this though. So if you've been around, this is my chocolate bonbons palette. So like I said, I don't have the full tin anymore. I have condensed it down to this. This is all that is left of this palette. I want to finish this one up. Finish up most of these shades, hit pan on them, and then keep the pans because I think the little hearts are super cute. But I ended up getting rid of the shades that I just wasn't interested and I knew I wasn't going to use anymore. So then when I curated this little color story, I thought it was absolutely adorable and still gave off those chocolate bonbons vibes from the palette that I loved and adored. And that has been one of my favorites from that range that they do. A couple of those shades I had completely finished off before I had even done this. Those were my favorite shades, of course, but I'm still happy that I have a few of those. Another palette that I really like from Too Faced is this teddy bear palette. This is the only one that I have in this slim little package, and I absolutely adore this one. I know some people have mixed feelings on this, but I really like it. I have completely finished off this lid setting shade. I have hit pan in this one. I like that you can go kind of more like pinky, or you can keep it with the neutrals. They are warmer, but I still really like this. But because I also heard mixed things about the other ones that have packaging like this, I haven't bought those ones yet, and I don't know if I want to. I'm also not like huge on the color stories, but I really like this one a lot more than I was expecting to, so I'm happy that I have this one. And I'm pretty sure I got this one at Winners, so I didn't even have to pay full price, which was lovely. This is the Born This Way Sunset Stripped, and I got this for Christmas last year. I haven't dipped into it yet, but this is what this one's looking like. And because I have this one, I want the first one. I was debating the first one for a while, and then after I got this one for Christmas, I was like, okay, I need to get the original one now. So I haven't bought it yet. Maybe one day I will, but I feel like I need them both. Oh, I do. I lied. This is the pumpkin spice palette. I don't know why I didn't realize I had this one. This is the only full-size package that I have in the tin. Again, I absolutely love this color story. I've gotten a little bit of use on this shade here, so you can kind of see that, but the rest of it looks kind of untouched. Some of it is. I really haven't dipped into this side as much as I thought I would have. I've dipped into like these couple of shades a little bit more than I thought I would have. I'm not huge, like, I don't know how I feel about Too Faced shadows, just using them in general. I know hitting pan on them is difficult. I will keep this around, like this isn't going to go anywhere, but I don't reach for it because I'm not in love with the formula, even if this is one of their better ones, because I'm pretty sure this formula was one of their better ones from all of their tins. And then like since then, I just haven't been interested in any of the color stories. They've all been exactly the same with like the tiniest little pop of color. At least this one you have a little bit more color. It is still very neutral, but you have the pinks and the purples and the greens and the lights and the dark, and the like this one just is a lot more rounded out, and I prefer this over what they've been coming out with lately. So those are all of my Too Faced palettes. So we are going to chat about the other two palettes that I have from Sigma. I'm trying not to make too much of a mess, but that's not going over very well. Okay. So I have two. I have the Corda Rosa palette, and I have this one right here, which is the Warm Wishes, which I believe was a holiday last year. But we're going to chat about the Corda Rosa palette first. Don't mind the color. It was faded. It was sitting in the sun, so you know how that goes. So this is the color story. Have not used it. There's been a few shades in here that I've been wanting to use. I'm pretty sure it was this one that like really pulled me in and finally made me bite the bullet. This had been out for a while. I only purchased this just like the end of 2022. And for some reason it was like this shade and maybe this one, couple of these that like really pulled me in, but I haven't used it yet. And then I've been hearing like mixed reviews on this one as well, so I do want to try this out come springtime, I think, and like make a decision on what I want to do with this at some point, but it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. I am happy that I have this one in my collection. The Warm Wishes I thought was absolutely adorable. I love how the shimmers look. Don't know what they look like on the lid, as I haven't tried this one either yet, but when you're looking online and they have like the little video of the shimmers just kind of going, they look stunning. I just don't think that they are the same in person, which is really disappointing, but I want to give this one a shot and just see if I like it or not. I think the packaging's super cute. I have two from Patrick Ta. So this is the Major Dimensions one. This is my Pan That palette in order, which is a very chill project. So I am currently working on this shade here. You can see a little bit of usage in it, which is super exciting. You will see an update on this one in a couple of days, so I'll chat about it more there. But this is what this one's looking like. And then I have the Major Dimensions 2, which I haven't reached for at all recently, but this is more of the berry toned one. And I think most people like this formula better. I won't use the creams in either of these, and I'm not interested in the third one, which is all matte. Okay, I am missing one of these. I'm going to go find it. These are the Essence little palettes, so let me go take a look and see where that one is, and I will be right back. All right, it was in my purse. So we're gonna chat about this one. This is also in a project, so I'm not gonna open it right now, but this is the Essence Bronze This Way, which it's like completely rubbed off, but you can see like what it used to look like. I really like these palettes. This is the Bronze This Way. This is the Coral Me Maybe, which I will show you this one. I have pan in 3 of the shades. I would like to completely use up these palettes since they are so little. I think that they're just like perfect for every day. And then I have my beloved The Rose Will Go On. This one I brought into my collection for personal reasons, for memories, and I will not be using this palette. I do want to actually like purchase a second one, I think, to get use on it, but this one is like not being touched. The plastic is still on it. Unfortunately, like the top, the packaging is starting to wear away, like the other ones have, but these shades will not be used. This is just like a very sentimental palette to me, and I just I can't. So I may purchase a second one to actually get some use on it and enjoy the color story and everything, but this one specifically will be like just a display purpose only palette. But for today's video, I figured I would show you anyways. I do have a couple Glamlight palettes we're going to chat about. The first one is the Margarita palette, and honestly, I'm not a fan of this one as much as I thought it was going to be. I really enjoyed this side of it. These two shades here are super pretty, but I don't know. I don't ever really want to reach for this palette, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Of course, I will keep it around. It's not on a chopping block by any means at this moment, but we'll see how I feel about this palette come summertime. Maybe I can get a lot more use and love on it at that point, but for now, I'm quite unsure. But the Chocolate Martini palette, on the other hand, has a whole lot of love. This is my level 3 for Project Level Up. I've been using this one in my lids. Part of it fell out as well, but I stopped using the shade to use the What's Up Beauty palette in my lids. We're just gonna love this palette. I've adored this one, and I will continue to love and adore that palette. I have my Michaela Glamlight palette here. So this is what the color story is looking like. I have a couple pans in here from, I believe it was Project Level Up last year. I had this in level 2. I really like this color story. I really like these shades. I have this in Panlo's eyeshadows at the moment, and I've really been enjoying it. I just haven't been able to, not that I haven't been able, I just haven't played around with this palette as much as I would like to. I would like to kind of spread the love a little bit and not just focus on the one shade that is currently in that project from this palette. But one day that'll happen. Some of these shimmers are some of my absolute favorites, but my favorite palette from Glamlight is the Ice Cream Dream palette. This is absolutely stunning. I think it's so cute. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. I love a lot of these shades. Some of these I don't really, I'm not a big fan of. I probably wouldn't really want to wear too often. But this has been, spoiler, an idea that I've thought about using for my Panning Solitaire palette because it would work very well. So I don't know if I want to do that with this palette sometime soon. Maybe the next one. We'll have to see how it goes, but this has been an idea for that project. So if you're interested in maybe having me use this as one of those palettes for that project at one point or another, let me know. But I think that this is just a stunning palette altogether. So I have two Pat McGrath palettes here. This one, the top has broken off. I've never reached for this. I had pulled this into a project last year, I think, and I just never touched it. I still have the cover on it. I will probably keep this one. I've been debating about what I wanted to do with it. I think I'm going to hold on to this one, see what happens. But this one right here, I'm not going to actually hold up because when I opened this palette, one of the shades broke on me. Surprise, surprise. Now, I am going to say, I did try depotting these because I thought that this palette was magnetic because it seems like part of it is, but the shadows themselves are not. So I have the one that's broken had pan in it. I have pan in this shade, and then this shimmer shade here has a really good dip. I think what I might do is take those 3 shades out and keep them with my singles and then just get rid of the rest of them because I'm not really interested in some of those other ones. The little plastic 5-pan that I had, 2 of those shades were similar or the exact same ones that were in here. I got rid of those. I'm probably going to get rid of the larger pan ones. I just need to find magnets to put on the bottom of those since they're not magnetic and they won't stay in my palettes. But that is what my plan is with those 2 palettes currently. Okay, we're going to chat about these little Kaja stacks because I have a few of these and I love these things so much. So the first one we're going to chat about is the very first one that I purchased. This is Hella Azalea, and I haven't worn this in such a long time, but every time I did, I had such comments, amazing comments on it. People were telling me how much they loved my eyeshadow. I absolutely loved the look that I did, and it was a very simple, just these 3 shades, and it turned out to be absolutely beautiful. So I want to play with that one a lot more this year. This one is in a Lotta Colada, so this is a neutral, super pretty as well, but I don't wear it very often, but I would like to hit pan in all 3 of these shades at some point. That's the last one. And then these 2 I got off Poshmark. So this one is in Rose Water. Now these ones, the last two I'm going to show you are just the shimmer ones, which I wasn't quite sure I wanted in the first place. But I adore these ones so much. I find they're absolutely beautiful to throw all over the lids. I have a nice pan in there. And then unfortunately, this one kind of broke on me. So like the top, most of the layer of the shadow had actually fallen out onto the floor, so the bottom very thin layer is all that's left. So I want to completely use that up, even if it's a slight bit too dark for what I prefer. I think I could mix it with the other two shades and really get some use on that one. And then last but not least is Orange Blossom, which I haven't dipped into all that often. I've got a little bit of usage on the top there, and then we have this shade and then the last shimmer shade at the bottom. I really love these things. They're like almost $40 now though, $35, which I think is ridiculous considering they were like $27 at the time, and that was still a lot. So I don't know if I'm gonna end up purchasing anymore, but there are a couple that I still want, so we're gonna see. But I think that these are just perfect to throw in your bag if you're traveling, bring it to work, something small, something compact, and I've just loved all of the looks that I've created with these. So I'm happy that those are in my collection. I just don't use them as much as I think I should. We're gonna chat. Oh, I completely forgot about these ones. So I have one palette from Artist Couture. This is the Supreme Nudes palette. I was debating getting like the bronze and the mauve one in these, like this size, and then a couple of the smaller ones that are like this, but I think they're essentially, I think it's called the Quickie. It's like the same shades, just in a mini, so I'm not gonna bother with that. I like this palette. I haven't used it very often, but the couple of times that I've dipped into it, I have really enjoyed it, and the clasp, I love it. I just love it. Sometimes I will just sit there and just like play with it because I just love how the closure works on this one. It's a stunning palette. Because I like this one, I am debating the other two, even though I think I can only buy them on the actual Artist Couture website right now. And I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. Let me know if you've tried those ones, because I've heard really mixed reviews about those two, or at least the mauve one. Whereas this one, I really do enjoy it. And I think this one has like the best reviews on it. So I don't know what I want to do with that, though, like those other two, but I do like that one. Now, I did mention in my singles video yesterday that I am kind of done purchasing, or should be done purchasing, singles unless I'm buying them in a palette format. Now, this is a magnetic palette. I don't have the actual palette itself because it was sold out, but they were selling all of the shades as a bundle for the palette. This is by Glaminatrix, and this is the Nearly Natural palette. Now, I want to switch out the packaging that it's in to something a little bit different. Gimme Glow has a bunch that I want to pick up, but I haven't done that yet, and then I want to switch out the packaging. But because I don't have the actual palette itself, and they sold all of the shades in the palette as a bundle, that is what I will do. And so I'm counting this as a palette because that is how I purchased it, even though they came individually. And I intend to use this as a palette. I wanted this one, but I wasn't able to actually purchase it as a palette. I haven't used these shades yet, but I've lightly dipped into, because I got a little bit of one of the shimmers on the top of the thing, and I just slightly swatched it out, and it was stunning. So I do have a few Glaminatrix singles that you would have seen yesterday. I love that brand so much. I think they're absolutely beautiful. There's the Romantic Rose palette that I really, or Rich Romantic or something like that, that I really want. But this is technically singles, but I'm considering it a palette because they were sold as the palette bundle. So that's what this currently is, and hopefully the packaging will get switched out at some point in the future. Okay, we're gonna chat about Viseart. I have 3 palettes from them. Technically, yeah, we're gonna chat about this one first. So this is the Violet Attendu palette. This is just a purple toned palette with some, well, purple and neutrals, but they're like purpley toned neutrals. I think this is pretty. I really don't get as much use on this as I thought I was going to when I first bought it. So I do want to actually play around with this one a little bit and see if I really enjoy it or not. And then these two. So this is the Solstice packaging. 3 or 4 of these shades are from the original Solstice palette. The other shades are from the Warm Edits palette, which was the 12 pan. So this is what I have left of this. There's 6 shades in here. And I want to say these 2 for sure, and maybe these 2, or at least one of these 2 are from the original Solstice palette. And then in my midsummer packaging, which I completely finished off this palette, are the remainder of the Warm Edit shades. And that's what this is looking like. Have not reached for this. I really have a whole story. Don't know what I want to do with these. So we're going to hopefully try and get some use on them this year. But that is what I have for Vizier. Melt, I have 3 palettes. And we're going to chat about the Radioactive palette first. I want to say this was like my... No, maybe it wasn't my first palette. I can't quite remember, to be honest. But I think this color story is super pretty. I just don't reach for it. But like these few shades here, I absolutely love. I had heard that this was a stack before, and these were like the original shades, and then they added some of these. So I probably would have preferred it palette form, but with the stack colors. But I think this is adorable as well. Apparently these are magnetic. I haven't actually tried taking them out, but I would maybe one day try to and turn this into a magnetic palette because I think the packaging is stunning, especially for something like that. I have the Gemini palette as well. This is the original one. So I really do like this. I've used it a few times and I've adored every look that has come out of this palette. I think it's very fall, grungy, beautiful color story. I love it so much. I wasn't a big fan of the Gemini 2, so I just decided to stick with this one, and I'm happy that I have this one. And then the other one that I have is the Rust palette, which I've been hemming and hawing against. I'm kind of torn on this palette and what I want to do with it. I don't think it's the I think it's the shimmers that I don't like in this palette. Haven't really played with it too much lately. I was debating getting rid of this like a year or so ago. So I think I'm going to just play around with it a little bit more. Again, maybe just turn this into a magnetic palette and figure out what I want to do with the shades inside of it. But I love the Melt packaging. I think it's absolutely stunning. And I'm pretty much keeping some of it around for the packaging, but that's okay. We're gonna chat Lunar Beauty. I have 2 palettes. I have the original Life's a Drag palette. This is what mine is currently looking like. I have Pan in the shade Beach. I have a large dip in the shade Legendary. And it's mostly these shades here that I really gravitated towards. These 2 shades, if you've heard me talk about my pink and yellow combo, eye look that I love and adore, these were the 2 shades that got me started on that. And then I haven't really reached for these too much. Maybe this one the odd time. But other than that, it's been a while since I've used this palette, but it had been such a long time, and I started dipping into it again at some point, and I still fell in love with the formula so much. So because of that, and because I've been wanting this palette, I ended up purchasing this one off of Poshmark at the beginning of last year as well. This is the Nude Prism palette, and I like this a lot. I think the shimmers, the formula of these shimmers are not what I have in my collection anywhere else, and I think they are stunning. I don't reach for it as much as I thought I was going to, but I do enjoy using it when I do pull this out. I love the looks that I get out of it. I think it's very pretty. I just feel like I should probably pull this out and use this a little bit more. But again, I think this may be eligible for project level up for 1 level. So who knows, maybe I'll be getting a lot more love on this palette later this year. Who knows how that's gonna go. Okay. We're going to chat about a couple of palettes. Again, I only have one of. I must have forgotten these ones. But this is by Uma Beauty, and this is the Coming to America Royal Heritage palette. Ooh, I still have the card because I think it's stunning in here. This is what the color story is. I pulled this into a project sometime last year or the year before. I used every shade a few times. And I haven't really reached for it since, but I did love using this palette as well. So I want to get a lot more use on this one too this year, hopefully. And then the other one that I have that, again, I absolutely love the formula of is the BH. This is the Sweet Shop Sugar Cone palette. This is the only one that I had out of this collection, even though I wish I had a couple of others. Of course, the neutral one, but I love these shimmers. I think they're so pretty. Again, I want to start dipping into this one a little bit more and just show it some love. Okay, we're gonna talk about the last few brands. I have 4 more piles to go through. So we're gonna start off with the smaller one, which is Give Me Glow. Like number, what was it, 3 in my collection. I cannot wait to dip into these. And I realized that I have all of these shades as nail polishes and Hollow Taco because she came out with a Pastel and Don't Tell bundle at the beginning of I think it was last year. And they are literally all of these shades. So I'm so excited to do a whole pastel look with all 12 of these, all 6 of those and just like all in one look, because this is the only palette that I wear all 12 shades in one look. One eye, 3 shades, the other eye, the other 3. You've heard me talk about it if you have been around. So I don't need to explain it anymore, but I adore this palette so much. Now, this is my Coral Nightlife palette, and when I purchased this, there was a couple of things that were going on at the time, so I asked for a couple of switch out shades, which are these 2 right here. And I don't really reach for this palette very often. Again, I kind of switched a few things around. I was talking about it yesterday in my singles collection that my Summer Vibes palette is gonna look different. This is an actual single that I threw in here. Most of these are from this palette, but I kind of like, these were originally singles, but I had them switched out for this palette. So I feel like this is just more or less like a singles palette as well, just like my Glaminatrix one, with a few different changes in it. It's not the like full original palette. But then my Summer Vibes palette is what I kind of depotted some shades out of. So the singles that you saw yesterday from Give Me Glow were from this palette. And I have like this shimmer here, this one here, and I want to say this one here are ones that I decided to switch into this palette. I kind of want to switch up this bottom row a little bit. I love all of the shades, but I think just because like the first 2 rows are a little bit more fun, bright, and poppy, I want to just kind of switch this up so there's not like 3 neutrals in a row. But I do love this color story now a lot more. And I think that this is a beautiful palette. I like the Give Me Glow formula. So the singles that I originally purchased are in here. A couple of them are in here. And then the palette, or the shades that I actually took out of this palette, are now considered my actual singles. All right, let's make some room. Okay. We're gonna talk Natasha Denona. I have a few of her palettes here, and the first 2 I'm gonna chat about are these larger 5-pan palettes I got from Poshmark. I believe this one is in the Peak. I think this was BoxyCharm or something. I've never had it, I don't know. And then this is the Coral palette, which I know you could buy off the website or Beautylish, but again, I got both of these off of Poshmark. I wanted to get at least one of these because I liked the idea of the fact that they're magnetic. You can take them out, you can switch them around, you can create your own color stories. And I thought bringing these for travel or bringing it to work, just creating a little simple 5-pan palette would be fun to do. Not realizing that these pans are larger than the ones that come in these palettes, which is kind of what my thought process was. So this is the Love palette. This was the first Natasha Denona palette that I had. I bought this on Sephora, I had it 50% off, and I decided that this is what I was going to test to figure out if I wanted to purchase Natasha Denona going forward. I enjoyed the formula. I know some people had mixed reviews on this one. I liked it, so I kind of started buying some of her palettes, which you'll see shortly. I'm not a huge fan of like the full color story the way that it is, but I also don't really want to switch it around. Some of the shades I probably won't use, like these ones here. I don't know about this one. This is like one of the only silvers that I have in my collection, minus a single that you would have seen yesterday. So I do like reaching for this. I just don't do it very often anymore. But because of this palette, that is why I started to purchase a few others. I have the Sunrise, which is my Project Level Up palette at the moment. So you would have just seen this, so no spoilers, but that is the color story. I think it's stunning. I've used every single shade in here one time, and now I have to hit 1 pan, which I think may end up being that shade right there because it has a little bit more use on it. This shade here has my heartstrings. I want to do a look with these 3 shades. I just really enjoy this color story, even though I probably didn't wear it the way that I would have hoped I was going to in the beginning. And at first I didn't even really want this palette when I had seen it. This palette and this palette I think were 50% off at the time, and I only bought the one. But buying this one off Poshmark, I'm happy that I have it. Another one that I have is the pastel palette. I have not dipped into this, but the packaging, oh my god, you guys. This is one that I would like create my whole color story with and just take with me. I really like some of these shades, but again, I haven't worn them on my lids. My favorite obviously is the Pastel Dreams by Gimme Glow. So I don't want to like compare the two and figure out which one I like more, which one I like less. I don't want to do that. I just want to like use this and see if I actually like it. and then just kind of go from there. But that is what this color story is looking like. And like, I think I've dipped into this one a couple times, this one, a lot of the lighter pink shades, of course, but I think that is super pretty. The retro palette is another one that I have that I surprisingly have not used yet either, and I really want to dip into this one sooner than later. This is one that I thought I was going to just dive into once I bought it, and when I did, I just haven't used it. I think it's coming on to 2 years now that I've had this palette, so unfortunately this one wasn't rolled into Project Level Up for level 1, but I would like to still try and get some sort of use on it. So we're gonna have to see how I'm gonna make that work this year. And then I have one of her larger palettes, which is the Trio Chrome. Again, I got this at a very good discount. I haven't paid full price for any of these palettes. Any of my high-end palettes, I usually don't pay full price for. This is the Color Story. This palette, I was like so excited to dive into, dig into, play around with when I first purchased it, and I just haven't done it yet. I will get around to it, I promise, but it is stunning. It is still untouched. I probably swatched a couple of the shades, but that's about it. But I am super happy that I have this because it is now discontinued. You can't get it anymore, and I was not paying like the over $200 for this palette on Poshmark. It was $163 Canadian, but that's not what I paid for it. So these are my Natasha Denona palettes. Next, we are going to move on to my Huda palettes, and then we've got one more brand to chat about. So I have one 9-pan palette from Huda. This is the Neon Pinks palette. That's what she's looking like. I have one pan, which has been in here for a little while now, and I think this is super stunning. I do wish that I had the orange one as well, which I cannot seem to find anywhere. And the green one I was never really interested in anyway, so that one I'm okay with, but I only have the pink. I have the new nudes, and I don't know, I don't like keeping palettes in like its original packaging, its cartons and stuff like that, but I like this so much better than I like the actual packaging of the palette because I'm not a fan of her eyes on everything, which I guess now has been like kind of changed. But this is what the Color Story is looking like. I really haven't used it. This is the concealer shade, I think. So I'm not quite sure what I want to do with that. There's some glitters in here I probably won't use, but I got this like half price, if not a little bit more than that. So I ended up buying this palette. I wanted it when it first came out. I was in store swatching it and I wasn't sure. Oh, excuse me. I wasn't sure about the glitter, so I kind of held off, and there was no way I was going to pay like the almost $80 for this palette. So for 45 or 40 or whatever it was that I got this palette for, like that I was a lot more okay with. Same thing with the Naughty palette. Again, I did not pay full price for any of these palettes. I bought these all about half price, except for the next one I'm going to show you. But this one has been not touched either. Again, this is the one where this weird looking shade came out. I don't know how I feel about it. Haven't tried this one, so I don't know what I'm going to possibly try and do with it, but I think that the Color Story on this one is very beautiful. Next is Rose Quartz, which is what my Panning Solitaire palette is currently. I love the layout of this palette because for me and that project, it just goes so well together. But I am loving this palette so much. So I still just have my 2 pans. Not too much of a spoiler. I just rolled in level 3, level 3, whatever you want to call it, my trio. So there isn't going to be a whole lot. I kind of like dug my brush into that, like the end of the brush. So there's a little thing on there. I don't know what I'm going to do with that shade. I might try it. I might see. I tried swatching it once. DW from Dub's Beauty Diary says she uses it like as a base. So I might try that and see if it helps amp up the shimmers a little bit because it does for her. But I love this Color Story and I'm really excited that I'm using this one right now. And then of course my beloved Mercury Retrograde palette. That's what she's looking like. I need to finish up some of these shades. I really want to completely use up this palette. Some shades are going to be a lot more tough than others, but I love and adore this thing. I think this was number 2 and in my favorite eyeshadow palettes, and I still adore this so much. So but I am ready to kind of start to let it go just because the packaging has been broken for a very long time. But this has been one of my favorite color stories in my collection. Now I completely missed these 3 because the Huda palettes were on top, but I have 3 palettes from Blend Bunny. So this is the Surge palette. And of course those neons down at the bottom are what grabbed me, but I love the whole grunginess of this color story too. I've used this a few times, and again, I've used all 6 of these shades in one eye look. and it was for an 80s bachelorette party, so it was perfect. And I just really like this one. I just need to start using it a little bit more. The dollhouse I found is very beautiful, very simple, very bridal, which is what I wore to my dad's wedding a little bit over a year ago at this point. It was like these 3 shades here, super pretty. I've used most of these shades. I think I've used, I don't know, I can't remember anymore. Maybe like these few rows here, and I've really enjoyed what I have reached for this one. I just want to start dipping into it a little bit more. And then I have the Blends, which is an all matte rainbow palette, and I have pan on this shade here called Secrets. Haven't really dipped into much more than this because this was in Panless Eyeshadows last year or the year before. But this is, again, one that I want to really play around with. I have these in Panless Eyeshadows this year, so we're going to see a lot more love on all of these palettes coming up, and I'm really excited about it this year. Now, the last pile I'm going to show you guys is by Beauty Bay. Now, I have a larger pile than I did before because these are the newest palettes to my collection. I just got these in the other day. So the one that has been around for a while is the Pastels. I have had this for a few years at this point. Haven't really reached for it or used it, but I was like really dying to figure out if I wanted to buy some of the 16-pan palettes. I was swatching these out. They're so smooth, so soft, so beautiful, that even though this is a pastel palette and I haven't reached for this one, I bit the bullet and I bought 5 more palettes. So I would like to get some use on this one in the upcoming springtime this year sometime, because I think I'd have a lot of fun with it. But I'm going to show you guys the 5 that I recently purchased and just got into my collection. So this is the neutral palette. All of these are the 16 pans. I actually wore this one yesterday to work and I really fell in love with it. I sat there and I swatched out a bunch of the shimmers and fell in love because they're so pretty. Of course, this black I won't use, but most of the rest of these shades, I think they're absolutely beautiful. So I'm really excited to dip into this one a little bit more and have another very pretty everyday kind of palette. Surprisingly, I ended up buying the Midnight palette. So this is like half purple, half blue. And when I first opened this up, I was like, this is a lot prettier in person than I was expecting. Now, this shade here, I'm very disappointed because if you could see around the rim, it was going to be a beautiful, stunning purple, shimmery shade. But unfortunately, it's just an overspray. Now, the shade underneath it is stunning. It's just a lot darker than I was expecting. I was really hoping for that more like pinky, super glittery, shiny kind of look. But unfortunately, that's not what you get. I was really debating about this palette because purples I don't mind. Blues are not my thing. And the fact that half of this palette is blue, I'm going to try and play around and see what I can do. But I am happy that I have this one because, like I said, it's a lot prettier in person than I was expecting. The one that I could not pass up on was the Berries palette. I think this is stunning. This shade here, Cloud, is what got me in the photos. Definitely a few of these mattes as well, and I'm just super excited about it. One shade, this one right here, I believe, yeah, this is called Nova, and that's my niece's name, except she spells hers with an H on the end. So I felt a connection to this palette. Plus, it's pink, which is my favorite color. Like I said, this is one that I could just not pass up, and there was no way I wasn't going to get it. Another one that I really wanted to try was the Tropical palette, and I purchased this one for a few reasons. One, obviously the color story, the bright pink, the vibrantness of it. I absolutely love this. But somebody had said that they compared I don't know if they compared this, but this also reminded them of the Strawberry Lemonade palette by Maybelline, and I have been trying, like, I don't know why I didn't want to get that palette when it first released and now it's gone. I've seen it on Poshmark, but I just don't know if I want to purchase it off there. So once somebody said that this reminded them of that palette, I was like, it got thrown into the cart. And it kind of does. Like, I haven't seen that palette in person in such a long time, the Strawberry Lemonade one, but this is like more of a poppy, vibrant version of it, I think, and I'm really excited to dip into this one in the summer. My pinks, my yellows, I'm gonna have a whole lot of fun with this palette. And then I ended up getting the Earthy palette, surprisingly, as well. I got an email saying that they were discontinuing it. It was 50% off. The rest were all 25% off. And now it's like 10% off. So I don't know if they're actually going to get rid of this one or not. But this color drew me in. A couple of these shimmers really drew me in. Now, some of these I'm not sure if I'm really going to wear them. But I might surprise myself. Like, these ones are a little bit too like actual green for me. But you have your olives. You have like your super shimmery shimmers in here. I'm super excited. I'm happy that I have this one as well. All of these palettes, I was really debating what I wanted to do with them, but I am so happy that I bit the bullet and have all of these palettes now. There's still a couple more that I want. I was going to buy all of them at once, but I was like, I figured I should buy, well, usually, you know, 2 or 3 just to test out, but I bought 5. I think there was 6 or 7 that I wanted in total. So we're gonna see what other ones they may come out with. I like the fact that these 16 pans are like, I love the size of them. I was looking at some of the 9 pans, but I felt like the 16 pan just pulled everything that I wanted. Whereas I could have grabbed the 9 pan in most of these. I just wouldn't have felt like it would have satisfied enough, because some of the shades that were missing were the shades that I really wanted. Some of the shades that I really wanted in these palettes were in the 9 pan. But there was a couple of those 9 pan palettes that didn't have like the 1 or 2 shades that I really, really wanted as well. So I decided to go with the 16 pan. And then most of these you can get in the big 42 pans. Some of those are just a little bit too big. There's only one that I really want, which is the neutral one. So this as a 16 pan, because it has, or as a 42 pan, because it has like the mauve tones. This one doesn't really. But again, I have so many of those mauve tones in my collection. I don't need that 42 pan palette. Plus, I'm trying to stay away from really large palettes like that. So that is everything. I'm going to count everything. I'm going to put up a number on the screen as to how many eyeshadow palettes that I have now in my collection. I don't have any more coming in currently. I don't have any orders placed, but I do plan on making one soon and possibly a couple of others. So I will do another collection and inventory series in 2025. I want to see what happens with some of these palettes that I'm unsure about, which new ones are going to come into my collection, see if my number grows or stays the same or possibly shrinks. Who knows if that's something that's ever going to happen. I love eyeshadow palettes just as much as I love highlighters, and I'm allowing myself to just indulge and let those collections grow, whereas my bronzers, I only want like 3 in my collection. You know what I mean? So some I'm allowing myself to just grow, and if I have a whole lot, it's not a huge deal for me, but I would like to actually go through some of these, figure out what I want to do, really narrow down my collection more so, and curate it to something that I'm really happy with. I did that a couple of years ago, and now I have a couple palettes that I don't know what I want, so I don't know if they fit that bill anymore. So I do want to just kind of sit throughout this year, while I'm bringing in new palettes that I'm excited about, go through older palettes and really curate this collection to something that I'm happy with and I feel like is completely me. So that is everything. So if you are keeping track, congratulations. I have not been, so I'm going to count everything. Like I said, throw up the number on the video or in the video here and let you guys know how many palettes I have. But thank you guys so much for watching. I know this has been a long one, but they usually are, because they're eyeshadow palettes and everybody loves those eyeshadow palettes. So I appreciate you sticking around. Thank you so much for watching this whole collection and inventory series. If you have been, I have the playlist down below, so if you have missed any of the other ones, I do have individual links to the videos, and then I have the playlist of all 4 of them for this year. And I'm actually going to go and throw the 2023 collection videos. I wasn't doing inventory back then, I was just doing collections. And I will throw those up for you as well, and you can go binge watch and see how my collection may have changed over the last couple of years or so. And I think I'm going to go back to my other previous collection videos from this year and add my 23 playlist in there. I might even have a 22 playlist, so if I do that, or if I do, then I will throw those ones in there as well. So keep an eye out if you're interested. But again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys taking the time to sit and watch these, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. And that is all for now. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you all later. Bye.